Dr. Stinger also often used the lack of evidence argument against God in its various forms, but he did with you as well, I believe.
Yes, he used that in the debate in Oregon, and his argument there is that the absence of evidence for some entity can count as evidence of absence, that is, evidence that it doesn't exist, if we would expect to have more evidence of that thing if it did exist. Let me give you an example. The absence of any evidence for a planet between Venus and the Earth is pretty good evidence that there is no such planet. Why? Well, because in this case, if there were a planet between Venus and the Earth, we would expect to see it and have evidence of it. So what Stinger maintains is that if God did exist, then we would expect to have more evidence of his existence than what we have. And I had a two-pronged response that I think is thoroughly adequate to this objection. The first one is, it's not clear that if God exists, he would have to provide that sort of evidence. And here I talk about Reformed epistemology. It could well be the case that God would provide a kind of inner testimony to people apart from the evidence that would lead them to himself if their hearts are open rather than closed and hostile to him, so that those who approach God with a spirit of humility and openness will come to a knowledge of God through this interior way. That's a possibility. But secondly, what Stinger and those who press this objection assume is that there aren't any good arguments for God's existence. That's why they say that if God existed, we ought to have more evidence of his reality than they do, because they think there are no good arguments. I think there are good arguments for God's existence. So that to say that if God existed, he would provide more evidence of his existence is to say that if God existed, he would provide more evidence than the origin of the universe out of nothing at some time in the finite past, than the incomprehensible fine-tuning of the universe for intelligent life, more evidence than the existence of a realm of objective moral values and duties in the world, more evidence than raising Jesus of Nazareth from the dead in attestation of his radical personal claims. And I don't see any reason to think that if God existed, he would be obligated to provide more evidence than that. I think that's plenty of evidence to justify belief in his existence.
Any other acts pale in comparison.
Yeah, they really do.
They're like parlor tricks.
And,
oh yeah,
and the resurrection of Jesus.
Pick a card, any card.
Yeah.
I mean, it just it's trivial
yeah.
when in comparison to that.